what is really standing between us and the joy is this resistance to letting go of the pain, resistance to letting go of the suffering, because we are just so used to it that it's kind of become this false layer of protection. It's almost like we are holding on to the suffering and the pain because we think that that will protect us from being disappointed. We think that we are suffering because the circumstances are making us suffer, but it's really us holding on to the suffering and not having the courage to just surrender to the joy. And it truly is an illusion. It's just a matter of our mind or ego being used to the old and how things were. We know that there's more, but it's so scary or uncomfortable to follow that more because we would have to do something that we are not used to doing, which is start following that joy. So it becomes this vicious cycle of keeping things as they are. I have been really thinking about the topic of authenticity and being your truest expression of who you are underneath the layers of the conditioning that we have received and taken on throughout life. And it just hit me so powerfully that it's not really so much about shedding any layers because they don't actually exist. It's really about the realization that you are ready to leave behind something that isn't just isn't just isn't true. And this addiction to suffering and pain and all the coarse emotions that we like to call negative, all of these emotions are just really a construct. And what is our true essence is joy. To me, that expresses through dance and movement, music and singing. Laughter and just enjoying the now moment is a huge part of it. And this is what we really are in essence once we really embrace the truth of us. And we have this misconception that we are suffering and we are somehow trapped by life circumstances, when in reality, what this is about is just being conditioned to suffering and being so used to suffering and pain that we don't see the possibilities for joy and embodying that, being so authentic that we are just in joy. And so I just had this clear vision of just me truly surrendering to joy and allowing myself to truly feel that joy in the moment and be completely taken over by joy and just being danced by life, which is our natural state of being. What is really standing between us and the joy is this resistance to letting go of the pain, resistance to letting go of the suffering, because we are just so used to it that it's kind of become this false layer of protection. It's almost like we are holding on to the suffering and the pain because we think that that will protect us from being disappointed. And in reality, that is the very thing that is creating more disappointment, because it's keeping us away from the joy. And if we just surrender and let go of this um, this suffering and this pain, and allow ourselves to just step truly into the joy and everything that it entails. So all the things that we would be doing if we were to follow the joy, allow ourselves to truly do these things, then we just are naturally in a state of joy. And it's just almost comical in a way that we think that we are suffering because the circumstances are making us suffer, but it's really us holding on to the suffering and not having the courage to, and the faith to just surrender to the joy. And what I recognize that is for me, and I think it's quite similar to most of us, is this doubt that we are able to follow the joy, that somehow it's safer to stay in the current state of being and circumstances, the way we feel the now moment and our life in general, that this is somehow safer than starting doing all these things that fill our life with joy. And it truly is an illusion. It's just a matter of our mind or ego being used to the old and how things were. So we know how things go on autopilot. We have tested it, so we at least we know what we can expect, even if we're not happy with it, or even if we know that there is more. Maybe we are just content. I think most of us are just content. And I think because we are so used to the opposite, we don't even remember what that looks like to follow the joy. Many of us don't even know what that would be. So it becomes this vicious cycle of keeping things as they are. And I think the way to break that cycle is to, number one, realizing that we are in a cycle and seeing it for what it is, recognizing this addiction to suffering. And I think that is something that each and every one of us will eventually do when we are ready for it, when we are ready to see that we are creating suffering, or at least complacency. And, it's possible to just jump headfirst. Most people, I think, need the gradual process, which is, I think, harder, even though the opposite sounds harder. Just jumping off the cliff seems harder, but I think it's harder to make it stick mm, and really go all the way through if we just do it gradually, because then we don't have this visible, we don't get this slap in the face that is maybe necessary to actually wake up and get out of it. Regardless of how it happens, it just takes the courage to start following the joy, and recognizing that everything that keeps us from joy is just our mind telling us that it's not safe to follow it, it's not wise, it's somehow not a good idea. Which is just an illusion, because the mind will it just wants us safe, and it sees the familiar as safe, and it's not necessarily the truth. And so I would like to invite you to give it some thought and explore what being in true state of bliss and joy, what would that look like to you? What is something that, when you surrender to it, always, without exception, gives you joy? And What is something that you used to do a lot of when you were younger, or even maybe a child, that you used to do and it used to bring you joy, and that you perhaps are not longer doing, or doing not enough of it for it to put you back in the state of joy? And I keep thinking of this quote by Rumi: "Your task is not to find love, but merely to find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." That's a poem that is a really powerful insight if you really take in the message in it, because I think that we all are naturally in a state of joy or love or gratitude, all these high states of being, or expansive is maybe a better word, authentic. And what keeps us away from it is all the barriers we have built against it, which is basically fear. And so if you can shed all the fear, or recognize all the fear that you have against everything that uplifts and expands you, if you recognize that, then you become conscious of it, and you are easier able to move through it, even though you're scared, because you know that they're not true. They're lies, they're illusions. I hope this gave you courage to follow your own joy, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.